Welcome back to the Training Model Podcast. I don't even know what episode this is, but we are back. And I'm going to say we are back to weekly podcasts from here until more than likely the end of the year. I've got a lot of things coming up, and I think the podcast is just a great place to keep everyone up to date. So thank you for tuning back in. And also just thank you for the support over the last, I don't know, I think it was 11 weeks last week. Since I kind of started this onslaught, especially on Instagram, I've pulled back a little bit in the last month, but I will be ramping that back up as well. But yeah, it's been a fucking hectic 11 weeks. I feel like I've been on a journey. There's obviously been a lot happening at Strength Culture with the boys away. And I was doing a bunch of, I think I had like nearly 80 clients at one point there, doing like 20 hours worth of coaching on the floor. And I don't know, just being back in that client-facing role, or the majority of the client-facing roles, was really eye-opening for me. Just how far removed I had made myself, which I don't ever intend to do that again. It was a challenging 2 years there, but and the reasons why I had to pull back a little bit. But now that I've kind of like found my passion, I would literally call it that. I've like reignited my passion and my direction and my goals and my goal setting and my desires for my work and my career. Now that all that has realigned a little bit, I think I will be significantly more involved with the physical space here at Strength Culture over the coming years, which I'm keen for because I really had lost it there for a little bit. But yeah, so today we've got a few things to run through. The first is intake 1 is complete. That was part of that fucking hot flurry that I was going through. But intake 1 of the movement mentorship is complete, and it goes down as my favorite education process I've ever had the pleasure of delivering. The feedback was incredible. The conversations and discussions I was having with the people that were in there were awesome from the very start. And obviously I've been educating around these things for nearly 6 years now. From my very first in-house internship is when this process started for me. And I've done so many different iterations of mentorships, online, in person. I've done business related things. I've done movement related things. I've run like foundations movement seminars, which was my understanding movement series that I ran. I've just done a whole bunch of all sorts of stuff. I've run seminars. We've done those big culture congresses. Like I've had a good coverage of education processes over the last 6 years. But when I took a little break, which was the last couple of years, and I was like trying to refine my processes, and ultimately the main refinement for me was I did a weekly free sort of coach development. When was that? Probably the start of the year sometime. And we did 11 weeks of it. And in that process, I fell back into the old habit, which is just diving straight into the really complex topics, the principles and all of these sort of things. And then over the successive weeks, I started to rewrap the application back to the principles. And I kind of, at the end of it, I actually asked for a bunch of feedback from the people, especially the newer people that hadn't been exposed to my ideas before and my overall models and my ways of thinking. I spoke to them and I asked them for some direct feedback. I had good chats with about 5 of them, and just asked, like, if I was to improve the delivery of this process, because ultimately we went over the 11 weeks, everything that we covered in the movement mentorship. It was kind of my like subsidy plan, my subsidiary, my background plan, my background goal for it was to package it in a way that is delivered well, doesn't lose coaches, especially new coaches that haven't been exposed to these deeper ideas. And I asked for feedback, and I got lots of really good constructive feedback. And a lot of it was around starting the process of the education on common ground. And that's ultimately where we got to with the movement mentorship, being that week 1 is just unpacking the shoulder, just discussing the shoulder, discussing the joint, discussing some of the muscles, the motion capacity. And then week 2 is the hip, like 2 areas of the body that most coaches should have a pretty good grasp on, even if you haven't gone into the deep stuff yet. But from there, we can actually then dive into some of the more deeper stuff. And ultimately, that's how I've built the movement mentorship. And the feedback on that and that delivery was so good. And I didn't even need the feedback per se from the students to know that it was good. Because as an educator, you know when you're losing people because you ask a question and there's no response, or the response is not even connected to what we're talking about, or it's a completely different field or idea. There's no connection with the ideas and the conversations that the people are creating and the discussions that are creating. It's harder online to get that than in person, that feeling. But ultimately from week 1, just based off the questions, I knew that I had done it significantly better than I had in the past, which was fucking awesome, because then it just built week on week on week. And it got to the end where we were covering so many ideas and so many sort of discussion points, and it was fucking mad. It was really, really good. The portal questions were awesome. The Q&A discussions were filled. Every week was like 90 minutes worth of Q&A stuff, and I know it's about to happen again with Intake 2, which is mad. So yeah, thank you to all the coaches that joined Intake 1, and obviously thank you to the coaches that have joined Intake 2. We've got 52 in there, which is officially the biggest thing I've ever done in this sort of sense. Obviously, we had a culture congress. We had like 100 people, but the tickets for that were like $80. But this is officially the biggest thing that I've ever done from an education standpoint now, which is fucking mad. We've already had 93 coaches sign up for Intake 1 and 2, which is awesome. I set a goal to get to 200 coaches as quickly as I could, and I was kind of hoping that I could get there by the end of next year, but I'm pretty confident that will be that goal will be ticked for me, which is awesome. So for the coaches that have signed up for Intake 2, the pre-learning modules, so the contextual stuff, just some general ideas, there's about 2.5 hours worth of content there. That will be sent out for Wednesday. This Wednesday, which I believe is the 20... Let me get a date up. Which I believe is the 21st of August. All that pre-learning stuff will be sent out. So if you've signed up for Intake 2, just get ready for that. And then obviously the first call is on the 4th of September. So it's not too late to jump in. Obviously the early bird's closed. It's not too late. If you are keen to jump in though, you can still jump in. It will be on the website, in the bio on Instagram or anything like that if you're keen. But yeah, fucking loved Intake 1, and I know Intake 2 is going to be just as good, and I can't fucking wait. Intake 3 for the movement mentorship will kick off most likely at the end of January for next year. I'll only be running 2 this year because I've got so many other things that I want to launch, and part of that, this podcast today is going to be discussing some of those ideas. But Intake 3 will be at the end of January, and I'll probably open up the intake at the end of October, maybe the start of November, but somewhere in there if you're keen for Intake 3. But Intake 2 is obviously open, so if you are keen to jump in, no time like the present. Hopefully I'll see you there and you can join the other 52 coaches that are ready to roll. The next thing that I wanted to chat about, because I've had a few questions, is the Strength Culture podcast. The number one strength and conditioning podcast in the world. That will be back soon. Part of the problem is we don't want it to launch with no real plan. It's something that I'm trying to get away from and trying to build some better systems and structures around me and my brain that just drives through walls every time I make a decision. But I'm trying to set up some better structures. And obviously with the Strength Culture podcast, we're trying to get international guests. That's one of the things we want. We've identified that just the Boy There's episodes, as fun as they are, they don't really tick the box of what that piece of content is for. It's really top funnel. We want to expand our brand and expand our audience with the podcast. And just running back-to-back Boy There's episodes talking shit doesn't tick that box for us. So we don't want to fall back in that trap. There will be Boy There's episodes, obviously, but we want to get guests on, but we want to do it in our way. And part of that is they're going to have to be online, which means our internet here sucks ass. So I'm going to get Starlink. I was meant to do it last week. I just ran out of time. I'll do it this week. I'm going to get Starlink and fucking G our internet up here at the facility, at the gym. So that needs to happen first. And then secondly, I have to kind of like chat with the boys around like what are our expectations for like when we can run these things. Because obviously not an international guest can't just log in to Zoom at 12 o'clock on a Tuesday when we normally film them. So we're just got to set up some structures and stuff around that to make sure that we're all on the same page, because I don't want to just throw everyone in the deep end and be like, yeah, there's a podcast at 8 a.m. on a Friday, and then everyone's pissed off and all of that sort of stuff. So it is coming. Just give us a little bit more time just to build that thing properly, because I don't want to fuck that up. So that is a little update on culture. The other update on culture is we are about to open up more coaching hours in the gym. We're also changing the way we do our online communication and opening up the opportunity to chat to your coach more frequently, more regularly. That was part of the process that I went through when I was coaching a lot of people. I just realized that some of the stuff that we had built into our service probably wasn't serving our clients as well as it could have been. So we're changing a whole bunch of things, which is that we're going to have more hours at the gym with coaches on the floor. So the Wednesday morning shift is going to come back. The AMs are going to be extended a little bit. And then secondary to that is our online coaching is going, or our online service. Even our in-person clients are part of our online service. The online parts of our service are going to be more regular, more check-ins with the coaches, which is going to be really good. So there's a few things changing from the strength culture standpoint. A lot of those changes are starting at the first week of September once Jamie is back from his holiday. He's obviously working online now, but just going to get everyone on a fresh slate as soon as we kick back off to wrap up 2024 and then move on to the next, right into the sunset for the business, which is going to be good. I'm fucking keen. Another big thing that I learned over that period of just intense work when everyone was away and I was handling a lot is how much I value the in-person community of strength culture. Not to say I don't love the online community. I love the online community, but there's something really fucking special at strength culture for the people that are here that really are bought into what we do and how we do things and the training and the events and all of that sort of stuff. Like it's actually crazy. And I want to leverage and move into that more and more. So part of that is that more coaching shifts. We've obviously built a new package to get started with us, our 6-week package, which has been really successful. And from a selling standpoint, it's a lot easier to sell than what our old onboarding process was. It just ticks a lot of boxes for us and new clients to get involved with as many aspects of what we can offer at once. So keen to push more of that and really build the in-person coached community here at the gym. Part of that as well is I'm going to be starting to run some one-on-ones. I'm going to build out a Calendly that you can book in via. I'm actually going to discount one-on-ones for the first 3 to 6 months. Normally an hour with me is like $160 an hour, but I'm going to probably just do them at $100. Like I want to get more people involved here. I want to get young coaches involved here, coming down. And I really want to help more people personally in a one-on-one setting. I don't really want to add programming to that. I do have programming packages now that I am coaching again. But so if you are keen to just do some one-on-ones, get to the gym here at Strength Culture. If you're around the area, there will be plenty of options for that as well, especially working with me in the one-on-one setting. So there will be a Calendly link popping up early September related to that, which I'm keen for. So yeah, there's plenty of really positive things coming for Strength Culture. I've got a little list over here that I'm ticking things off. The next little update that I have to have on the podcast is the Wormhole. The Wormhole launched today. This fucking thing has been in my head for nearly 2 years. I'll say 18 months. I finally pulled the trigger on it, and I was going to launch it at the start of next year, but just off the engagement of the first mentorship and how many good coaches were in there and keen and discussing things, I was like, nah, I've got to fast track this. I've got to move this up the priority list. So I've opened up the Wormhole. The first 12 weeks is kind of just a feeling out process to work out how much time commitment it takes me for this detail of content. Obviously, if you've followed me for a while, you know that I love being hot and cold with things. I'll fucking be aggressive for 2 months, then pull right back, and then be aggressive again and pull right back. That's just how my brain operates. And obviously, I was hesitant with something like a Wormhole, a membership site, regular content, because it goes completely against what I'm used to doing from a business standpoint and how I operate. But people, it's never going to be successful if my whole career is not going to be successful if that's how I operate. I need to start to challenge that belief of mine that I can be productive consistently, and not burn myself out. So that was some of the hesitation around pre-launching the Wormhole, but then I'm like, nah, fucking nut up, get it done, make it work. So I'm fucking keen for it. I'm really, really keen for it. I think it's going to be awesome. The first 12 weeks is just to make sure that I don't bite off more than I can chew with the deliverables. So currently the deliverables are a weekly, I'm calling it a tidbit, a little 10 to 15 minute, very application-based video, either in the gym or discussing a topic or the application of one of the ideas. So that's every single week, every Monday that gets dropped. Every month, we have a Q&A, so we have an exclusive portal. There's also questions sections on each of the content pieces that you can ask questions and discussions around. So any of those questions and discussions will get moved to a Q&A. Obviously, I'll be answering them throughout the week, but move to a Q&A where we have one every month. Hopefully that will be live. If I can find a time that's consistent, I'm thinking the final Thursday of every month I record that. But that will be the second piece of content. So weekly tidbit, monthly Q&A, and then there's going to be a monthly deep dive. And I think this is going to be one of the most valuable things, especially if you're a coach in Melbourne, because my plan is to have them live. Obviously, anyone can tune in. We'd have a camera up and have a Zoom there. But my goal is to have them live for people in Melbourne. They can come to the gym. We set it upstairs. We set it up downstairs. I can shut the gym for an hour or whatever we need to do. We can set this thing up to be really, really detailed application deep dives of specific content and specific ideas, specific applications, and they will be completely free for Wormhole members in Melbourne. I look around the industry in Australia and I just see nobody doing anything that I would have liked when I was 21, 22, 23, just getting started in strength training, getting started as a coach, really starting to find my groove and my direction. I just look around Australia and there's just not a lot of options for that sort of stuff. So I'm like, I think this can become that. And it would have been the thing that I would have raised my hand for and jumped straight in 10 years ago when I was just getting started. So I want to create that because I know there's a lot of young coaches out there that are in a similar position to me, and that's all going to be wrapped up into the Wormhole. So the Wormhole is live. I think I'm just checking now. We've got 9 spots left for this pre-launch, this first 12 weeks. I'm then going to shut it. It's only going to take 40 people total. Once I get the 12 weeks out, once I nut out the deliverables and the time commitment and all of that, I will then launch the Wormhole open to the public for everyone. All the content will be there from the first 12 weeks. And we just get rolling from there. There'll probably be a monthly subscription option and a 12-month subscription option. Obviously, the 12-month one will be heavily discounted, but I'm thinking somewhere around $60 a month, $55, $60 a month for the monthly one. But we'll see. Again, it's all on the time commitment. If I'm feeling like it's more involved than I thought it was going to be, it'll probably be more expensive. A question that I have had is there going to be business stuff in the Wormhole? Probably not right now. Not for this first, I'd say, 6 months. I might drop a couple of little things in there. But right now, I really don't want to do too much business mentoring. I think I can be very helpful for coaches, especially if you're a young coach looking to maybe open a gym one day or follow a similar journey to what I've been able to do in the industry. But I don't want trainingmodel.com.au to have too much business-centered flair about it. I want it to be coaching-centered. I want it to be application-centered more than anything. So a lot of the business mentoring stuff and the business content is actually deeper in. I'm not even talking about it publicly. I'm going to open up like a private mentorship for people that have done Business 101 and completed the movement mentorship. I've got a 12-week sort of thing that I want to try with that team. But yeah, if you want business mentoring, the Business 101 is still the place to start. I basically won't even have a phone call with someone unless they've done Business 101. And the reason is because a lot of the time, the initial call or 2 or 3 calls just become me trying to work out where you're at, because you obviously don't know where you're at. You don't know where your leads are at. You don't know what your content strategy is. You don't know your messaging. You don't even have an offer. All of those sort of things are just base business building that has to happen by yourself before I can even offer help. So if you do want business mentoring and all that sort of stuff, the Wormhole, probably not the best place to start at all for a little while. I would recommend just doing Business 101. And from there, if you want, we can have a chat. So that is the Wormhole. The final thing that we need to unpack is I've got 2 programs, downloadable programs. They'll be $99 each. We could buy the bundle for $150. They're going to be an upper body, which is going to be a bench press and reaching program, and then a lower body, which is going to be a squat and a deadlift program, with a bunch of educational resources and videos and walkthroughs and tutorials. We just filmed all the exercises last week. There's like 50 exercise videos and things that's going to be all wrapped up in there, as well as like how to build your own programs, how to modify the thing, understanding RPE. Like there's going to be a bunch of things around that, because I just want something that's a little bit more entry level for people that aren't coaches, that are lifters, that are following me, that are following along some of the stuff I'm talking about on social media, to jump into. So those 2 programs will launch the same week that Intake 2 starts, which will be the first week of September. So basically 2 weeks. There will be a little bit of a launch offer there. I'm thinking about maybe the first 50 people get a heavy discount that purchase either one or both. I just got to work out how to do that on Kajabi, but I will work that out. But if you want to stay up to date with that, I'd recommend just jumping on the email list on the Training Model website. That's the most of the wrap up of what's been going on. It's been hectic behind the scenes. I've actually just moved my desk again in this potty room. I'm very happy with the new location. We've now got Ziz on the back here, on the back right shoulder. There's just fucking heaps going on, and it's mad. My passion's back. I'm fucking back, and it's unreal. The other thing, I want to do a workshop in the UK. When I look at my Instagram reach, Melbourne's, obviously Australia's the biggest. The United States is second largest by a long way. But then there's the UK. The UK is like 10% of my audience. And I just want to do it. It's something I want to do. Laura and I want to go back to the UK. I've got a few people over there that are very close and I've been chatting with, had a few gyms reach out. I'm going to do it. I'm looking at April. So if you are in the UK and you would come to the seminar, please reach out, because it G's me up and it makes me more motivated to set the thing up. But I think I've got the gym that I'm going to run it at, depending on how expensive they are. It's a crazy gym. But that is going to happen. I'm going to fucking do that. I've had that goal for years. I lost that goal and I'm back and I want to do it. I also want to do America at some point, probably next year. Probably do 2 in America, one on the West Coast, one on the East Coast somewhere. But I want to make this work. I want to do it. It's a huge life goal for me, to run an overseas seminar and workshop. There'll be 2-day events. There'll be proper events, very deep dives into the overall model and the overall application of movement, and probably some programming stuff in there absolutely as well. I'm thinking about adding in like a little pre-learning course before the workshops to strengthen the understanding prior to the event. And then I would probably do like a 1-month Zoom thing where we can maybe add a question section somehow, get questions, and maybe I'll send a weekly email. Have you got any questions? Have you got any questions? And then do like a Q&A, a 90-minute Q&A after like a month of I want to make it as valuable as possible, because if I'm going to fly there, I need to charge a decent amount. Because obviously there's a shit ton of expenses. It's got to be worth my while. I've obviously got a family now, but I just want to strengthen it as much as possible and really set up a 2-day event that can really dominate. Doesn't matter where I go. So that's going to be a big goal for me. I'm working on that behind the scenes as we chip away. But if you are in the UK and you would come to something more than likely in London, please let me know. I've probably got about 5 people currently that have said, yep, we'll drop everything and come. If I can get that to 10, I'm fucking doing it, and we're going to roll. So, yeah, keen as. Lots happening. Thank you for sticking by me for fucking 2 years. The final thing that I want to chat today is a little bit about tension. So tension is, I think, misunderstood in the industry. And I think the reason that it's misunderstood is because people learn about movement and anatomy via the muscle first. And this is my whole shtick about muscle or bone first learning. And the problem with learning from a muscle first perspective is that everyone's seen it. You've got like a fucking muscle belly in a textbook. It's a muscle belly that's dissected into like a bundle of fibers, which is dissected into a single fiber, which is then dissected into the actin and myosin, the contractile proteins of the muscle. And then from there forward, we learn that the muscle contracts, and there's a process with the nervous system and the neuromuscular junction and the action potential that comes in and contracts the muscle. And we have the chemical process, the calcium and the ATP and ADP and all of this sort of stuff. But this contraction becomes the underlying idea around human movement, and that is that a muscle contracts to create tension, which it does. It definitely does that. However, if that's the foundation of our understanding of tension, it creates a lot of the narratives that I think are just completely wrong in the industry. And some of the narratives that flow on from a muscle contracts to take tension understanding is the tug and war of joint stability. And that is that when we see a joint move, it means that one side is pulling harder than the other side. And then that's where we get to these like joint stability ideas that run rampant in the industry. We all know now that stability is not a real thing. It's not a trainable outcome. It's not something that we can train into people. Stability is balance. That is what stability is. And when you lose stability, you've lost balance, and there's a reaction of the nervous system to counteract and reset the base of support or move the center of mass in order to not lose balance and fall over. That is what stability is. Stability at a joint level is not this idea of this tug of war between opposing muscles. It's just motor control, it's technique, it's skill. If you don't want your knees to come in the squat, it's got nothing to do with your hip stability and your foot stability. It's got everything to do with the way in which you execute the squat or your client executes the squat. And the way that we change a movement expression or a movement outcome is we teach the client a new way. We change the loading, we change the speed, we change the focus, we change the cues, and we develop a new technique over time that hopefully will become the primary technical expression, the movement expression over time. That process is motor control. It's motor learning. There is a set way in which we can change technique over time. It's got nothing to do with joint stability. It's got nothing to do with strong and weak muscles. None of that has any implication. It's, I don't like the movement, I'm going to change the way that this person completes the task or change the task so the movement changes. It's all motor control. And that joint stability thing is founded on the idea that we have a fucking sarcomere that contracts to create tension. That's the first one. The second one that I think is we get to the idea of tight muscles, and that tight muscles are overactivity and active tension and all of this sort of stuff, where in reality a muscle could feel tight for a number of reasons. There's a multitude of outcomes that could potentially make something, let's stay with the hip, that makes the lateral hip feel tight, the sensation being tightness. It could be active tension, it could be fatigue, it could be DOMS, it could be an injury, it could be something at the hip, the capsule itself. It could be something at the nervous system. It could be a referral pain from somewhere else. There's a multitude of reasons why something might feel tight. But if we have the idea that a muscle just contracts to create tension, it's very easy to fall into the narrative that it is tight because it's overactive, it's hypertonic, whatever fucking buzzword you want to use around that. And all of those ideas are founded on the idea that a muscle simply contracts to create tension, which is, it just doesn't. It's one of the strategies that a muscle has that potentially can create tension. And then back to the very start of this conversation is why I think the understanding of tension needs to be updated for most coaches. And to do that, we need to understand what tension is when we're not discussing the human body. And this ultimately gets to force and forces. So we're in physics land when we discuss force. And force is something that it impacts another object. So we have a bunch of different types of forces. The ones that we're mainly going to be discussing are contact forces, which are when something is pushed or pulled or impacted from an external object or organism or something. It's impacted upon. That would be and it's contacted. There's a physical contact between the two. That is called a contact force. And the two main contact forces that we need to understand for the human body are compressive forces and tensile forces. And now we can really begin to understand what tension is for human movement. Compressive forces squeeze objects. They push on the objects. They compress the object and the structure and the matter and the makeup of the object. When we think about the human body, gravity is a compressive force. However, gravity falls in the non-contact realm of forces. However, it has a compressive force on the system because it's always pulling us down to the ground at the same acceleration, 9.8 meters per second squared. Gravity is always impacting the human system and compressing it down into the ground. And that would be a compressive force. And the compression and the compressive management strategy lives within mainly the bones and the bone structure. And I had a couple of stories last week on this, but the bones are built to deal with compressive forces. Their makeup and their structure allows for prolonged, consistent compressive forces from gravity. It's why our feet are structured the way they are, that we have a large calcaneus and that we have the lateral foot touching the ground, and then we have the metatarsal heads across the bottom of the toes that touch the ground. However, unless you've got an overpronated foot, the medial aspect of the foot is off the ground. And all of the bone contact points are actually what's touching the floor and holding our compressive forces and managing our compressive forces with gravity through the feet. It is why the joints of the lower body are stiffer than the joints of the upper body, because the joints of the lower body are larger and stronger and more tightly compressed than the joints of the upper body. It is why the spine is shaped the way that it is, in that the lumbar vertebra are significantly larger than the cervical vertebra. And as we move up the skeleton and up the spine, we increase the range of motion potential of the individual vertebra and the vertebral joints at the different segments of the spine. In the lumbar spine, we're dominant in the sagittal plane only. In the lower mid-thoracic spine, we start to pick up a lot of frontal plane, lateral flexion, and stuff like that. When we go through the middle of the thorax and the midpoint of the vertebral column, we start to pick up a lot more rotation capacity until we get all the way up to the cervical spine, where we have a huge amount of range of motion. And that is because the cervical spine has less compressive force acting upon it from gravity, because it's only holding the head up. At the rib cage, it's holding the head and the shoulders up. At the lumbar spine, it's holding the rib cage, the head and the shoulders up. And then when we get to the sacroiliac joint, which is the most stiff structure in the body, we have the least amount of motion because it's the most heavily compressed part of the spinal column, and that's the connection of the spine into the pelvis. So now we have very little range of motion capacity at that joint. And ultimately, that compressive force has to be dealt with in some capacity, and that is through the bone structures more than anything else. So now that we understand compressive forces as one type of contact forces, we then get to the other world, which is a tension force. And a tension force is a pulling force, and it's pulling. It is created when you pull on something, and the tensile, the stretch that occurs when you pull on that thing. So if I was to pull an elastic band, the band itself undergoes a tensile moment where it increases the tension in order to deform and elongate, and that is the tension force. Obviously, that band, if it's attached to something on the other end, it's going to start to impact that other property, whatever it might be. I'm trying to use a bone analogy here, but if we were to pull on a muscle, that tension force is pulling on the opposing bone. And that is what we're trying to understand when we discuss tension. It is the amount of pulling force that is generated by the muscle. And if your only strategy to understand tension is through the contraction process of the muscle, we're missing half the point, because there are a lot of neurophysiological processes, and the two common ones are the muscle spindle and the Golgi tendon organ, if you ever went to uni and learnt about those. But these ride within what is called passive tension. Active tension is your contraction because it's active. It requires metabolic processes to create. It's active process. As a response to the metabolic processes of contraction, active tension, we get a lot of byproducts. We get a lot of fatigue within the muscle itself because of the contraction process, the active part of that active tension. However, we also have passive tension, and passive tension is when we add speed, dynamic movement, when we add large amounts of velocity or large ranges of motion, we get a very quick stretching property within the muscle itself, and we have receptors within the muscle and within the joints that trigger a tension response from the muscle itself. And this is ultimately where we get to the stretch shorten cycle. This is where we get to plyometrics. This is where we get to dynamic movements under high ranges of motion. But this passive response, this passive tension capacity of the muscle is just as important to understand. And if you come into your understanding of movement via the muscle first, you never really grasp just how important the overall tension capacity of the soft tissue structures are within the body. Because also, the tension management of the system, if the bones are managing the compressive forces, the tension management systems are all of our soft tissue processes and soft tissue structures within the body. So muscles are part of that. We also have ligaments, and we also have tendons, and we also have fascia that is holding and producing and controlling positions and forces and managing this tension response within the human system. So it's more than just this active tension that's happening, and it's really important to understand. So I just wanted to start that conversation because I had a good question on a podcast that I was on recently around that bone first, muscle first, and what is this tension. But if you don't understand what tension really is, you're going to really struggle to have these deeper conversations of human movement. So hopefully that helps if you are wondering about some of that stuff. I'm going to wrap this episode up here. Again, thank you for sticking by me over the last few years. If you've been here throughout my entire journey, I do appreciate it. Thank you to all the new followers and the new listeners that I'm assuming are going to jump on here. I really do appreciate it. There'll be more Instagram content to come. If you're keen on intake 2, you've got until the 30th of August to jump in. If you're keen on the Wormhole, we have 9 spots left for this initial 12-week. If you missed that, it's going to be reopened properly early November. And if you're keen on the programs, give me 2 weeks and those will be up. But very excited. Oh, the final thing is, if you are in intake 2, the pre-learning modules, they will open up on Wednesday. So very keen. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you enjoyed the episode, please share it. It G's me up. If you want to tag me in it, please do. If you want to send me a question, please do. I will see you next week because I'm back on the weekly uploads. There will also be a YouTube video this week as well. So thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.